I didn't enjoy the game. Wouldn't recommend. Thank you for your input. That was certainly 31 hours well spent on a very thought-provoking review. Thank you. Sup, gamers? Rainy Potato here, reviewing negative Steam reviews, just to see what the people think of this game. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to subscribe. I post new videos every day. Let's start out with this first review. He wrote a literal book with 0.5 hours on record, so this will surely be a good one. As a huge fan of the first game, I found the sequel to be immediately disappointing. The artistic direction is really solid, but some of the design decisions made are honestly bizarre. Taking a huge 40-hour campaign where you manage a stable of 24 or more heroes over time and replacing that with a run-based structure where you grind out single parties of 4 heroes over and over again in runs that last 2 or 3 hours was a bizarre choice. And gating pretty much every upgrade behind one big candle resources totally eliminates the push and pull resource management that made the first game so dynamic. So no. I don't really see where Darkest Dungeon 1 was dynamic. In fact, it's sort of the opposite because you get the whole, unlimited time as long as you're not running a Stygian, of course. But even then, you got 100 weeks to collect your resources. You always get the same upgrades. You basically get the same roster of heroes. You always eliminate the bad quirks and lock in 3 good ones. You always get the same trinkets essentially by the end of the run. You've just got like a list of like 50 trinkets that you always have, and you basically use the same ones on every hero in Darkest Dungeon 1. Like, that's just a fact of Darkest Dungeon 1. It's not like you're walking into Darkest Dungeon 1 into the darkest dungeons with like completely random stuff. Now, there are issues with the dynamicism of Darkest Dungeon 2, obviously. But like, that's compared to Darkest Dungeon 1, you do get different runs every time. So this is kind of a weird, like, this is a definite criticism that makes sense, especially considering this is a roguelite and it needs dynamic runs to be successful. But compared to Darkest Dungeon 1, it's a very weird statement. Cart navigation has a real mobile game feel. I've read this a lot. I don't really know what this means. The card is definitely an odd choice. I've basically gotten used to it over 2,000 hours, but I mean, it's hit or miss for me. Like, it doesn't really do anything for me, but it's also not, it doesn't feel like a mobile game. That's sort of a very weird thing. And systems feel much more abstract. I don't know what this means. Maybe I'm not smart enough to review reviews. Maybe this guy's IQ is just on another plane. Just like 69 head IQ. There are way more menus and combat modifiers, but all they really do is turn battles from XCOM, where you really have a sense of your heroes as characters engaging in actual combat in some real physical space, to any old card game where you're just crunching whatever numbers pop up on the screen. Is this a true statement? Did you guys who played Darkest Dungeon 1 feel that your characters were engaging in actual combat in some real physical space? Yeah, I don't feel this was a thing. Also, I've never played XCOM, but I also don't think I have a sense of them engaging in actual combat in real physical space. I don't know what this means. Also, and then of course they have this part where somehow he thinks you're crunching more numbers in Darkest Dungeon 2, where you have the new streamlined token-based system versus Darkest Dungeon 1, where you have to calculate 30 different damage modifiers. Like, I don't know what this means. I don't want to sound snarky, but if you showed this game and the original Darkest Dungeon to someone who had never seen either before, I think there's a high chance they would guess this was the developer's first attempt, and the 2016 game was the sequel that really made good on the concept. That's just not a real statement. The entire thing seemed like a huge step back. I really don't understand what motivated a dramatic pivot. I only played about half an hour, so it's definitely possible things open up more in terms of systems. Again, systems. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. And then he made an edit. Wow, insane number of negative responses in the comments. Alright, so yeah. I have no idea what this guy's talking about. He's talking about actual combats. Like Darkest Dungeon 1 is a realistic battle simulator. And Darkest Dungeon 1 is just a mobile game where you do turn-based combat. Everyone in this game can be gay. If that's your thing, you'll love this game. Tons of gay sex. I wish this review were true. I have seen 0 actual scenes of gay sex in Darkest Dungeon 2. And it's Pride Month. Come on, Red Hook. Get it done. Alright, here we have a 1.3 hours on record review. You might very well enjoy this game, but I do not. Thank you. That wasn't clear from the not recommended. I am a hardcore fan of Darkest Dungeon 1, and I'm going to be giving my opinion as someone expecting a new, improved Darkest Dungeon experience. Epic preface. The game was an Epic exclusive at first, and now launched on Steam at a higher price. This is rather insulting for me. How dare you charge money for a video game? Dungeons. There are none. You just follow Escape the Spire-styled map system on the mission you are basically railroaded on. This is unsatisfying, and you no longer have any real impact on the world. Alright, I mean, technically this is not true, but let's just go with it. Like, dungeons obviously aren't the same as Darkest Dungeon 1, so it's I don't know if that's a fair criticism, but it's definitely one I've seen that I don't entirely object to, although I don't really care about not having dungeons. This, however, you no longer have any real impact on the world. What impact on the world did we have in Darkest Dungeon 1? I don't comprehend. Like, wasn't Darkest Dungeon 1 like a time loop? You literally just go to your little hamlet and then you do the game and then the game starts over again? Like, wasn't that... Oh, spoilers, by the way. RIP. I don't know what this means. I didn't feel like I had any impact on the world in Darkest Dungeon 2, that's true, but I didn't feel that way in Darkest Dungeon 1 either. Also, I'm not really a lore guy, so maybe my opinion is just different from people. This also removes your planning phase. You don't plan your dungeon expedition, bringing items based on the map that you think you might need. A huge fun element of the first, in that you can prepare for your dungeons and even take risks by going torchless on large dungeons for extra loot. Alright, this is incorrect. There literally is a planning phase. No, you don't get the option to literally buy literally everything you could ever possibly need in a dungeon. But in my opinion, that makes it even more interesting. And you also basically have to carry over loot from one region to the next, not, sell all your supplies at the end of the mission and then come back fully stocked up. You have to sort of micromanage between a full run. So this is not one of the valid criticisms that I see for Darkest Dungeon 2. Also, torchless. You never go torchless for a full dungeon for loot. You might snuff the torch for, 1 second to get a little extra loot, or backtrack through a dungeon torchless to try and touch some curios that you missed. But like, if you're snuffing the torch the first thing on a dungeon, like you're doing it for a challenge, like you don't need to do this to get loot in Darkest Dungeon 1. But also, this is, I guess this isn't relevant here, but I would like something equivalent to torchless. Trinkets. Trinkets, loot, torches are completely different now. This has some major consequences. You can't buy and sell trinkets as you used to, which just feels unsatisfying. You also can't see what trinkets are coming up ahead, just that you'll get a random one. It's unsatisfying and just a blatantly worse system than the first. It's a fair criticism, although I don't really think selling trinkets would be a thing. Like, I feel like that'd be way too much. There's already so much inventory micromanagement. Like, in a game like this, buying and selling just wouldn't work at all. You'd spend so much time, just even more time, micromanaging your inventory than now. So I think this is actually a good decision by Red Hook. I also don't understand this. It's literally the same as Darkest Dungeon 1. In Darkest Dungeon 1, you could look around the map, you select a mission based on what rewards there are. That's the exact same thing you see in Darkest Dungeon 2 with the region-based rewards. You also have shops, and you can anticipate what items will be in shops based on the region. Whereas Darkest Dungeon 1, it's, you know, you buy from the Nomad Wagon, which is basically always a ripoff. So I feel like trinkets are like way more interesting in this game, especially now that they move to the region-based style. So yeah. Loot. There is still loot, but it's not there to upgrade a hamlet. You have no hamlet. You just have a place to bring candles for unlockables in a rogue-like style. The looting system is so disappointing that honestly, before long, you will stop looking at what types of loot you're even getting, as it doesn't matter at all. Even the trinkets you'll just give a bored glance to. I mean, let's see, this is the guy with 1 hour, so I guess this is kind of fair. You don't really have much loot when you start out, but there's enough loot that it matters. Especially trinkets, you don't really have much loot. So I guess this is a reasonable criticism, but also feels weird. Like, you could just say, not enough loot variety, instead of, I give a bored glance to these trinkets. Consequence. A huge part of DD1 was consequence. Doing badly on a dungeon, often bringing negative buffs. This no longer really applies, as quirks are just a boring afterthought. Not true. If you did badly in a dungeon, your team would die. And they would die for good. Also not true, you do have the resurrection mechanic. So you prepared hard to make sure you did the best you could. That is also gone. Your guys cannot die. They're immortal and serve as nothing more than a party of people you can always put into your roster for your railroaded missions. See, I think this is something people just can't wrap their head around in Darkest Dungeon 2. A run in Darkest Dungeon 2 is literally equivalent to a file in Darkest Dungeon 1. Except it's, 2 to 3 hours instead of 50 hours. Like, you literally do die. Permadeath is just as, if not more, real in Darkest Dungeon 2 than Darkest Dungeon 1. Especially since the heroes are actual real people now, instead of, oh, I got Highwayman number 657 to add to my roster of 20 Highwaymen. Like, the consequence of dying is you die, you lose the run, you are a loser. You have a loss on your record. Like, that's the point of a game, is if you win, you win. If you die and you lose, you lose. Like, how is that not a consequence? That's... Alright, sure. Yeah, graphics, sure. Soundtrack is forgettable. Apparently you've never been to the Shroud. Voice acting is amazing. Lower quality. Bosses. Because there are no dungeons, and the missions are so railroaded on forcing you down their path, you can't switch between dungeons with entirely different enemies and items at the locations anymore. You can't switch between which of the 4 epic bosses you will fight and eventually slay, removing them from the world on your way to the darkest dungeon. Instead, you just follow the game's linear path set out for you, hope you don't lose in a fight, and just exist. Alright. Apparently this guy has never played the game. You literally do switch between locations with different enemies and items. Apparently... And the regions are like basically the same length as dungeons in Darkest Dungeon 1. So like this is just not. You also have more end bosses to fight. Of course, you do only have the 4 lair bosses. I have heard people that want more lair bosses. I'm undecided on that, but either way, this is just not correct. You just exist. Like This is such like vague criticism. Unlike Darkest Dungeon 1, where everything felt very real physical combat space, in this one you just exist, very sadly. Anyway, nice review. 1.3 hours, by the way. Alright, here we got a 86-hour on record review. The switch to roguelike, then roguelite after so many people complained. Shows how dumb of a decision it was in the first place. What? Wasn't this always technically a roguelite? Isn't like a roguelite feature that you have meta progression? I mean, there's always been meta progression. They just changed it so you have choice over it. Like, it was never an actual roguelike. So, could start with the review. After 77 hours, I can say this game sucks compared to the first. The limited progression with candles has minimal impact, and most of the important stuff can be unlocked very quickly. Then candles are pointless. Somewhat true. I am not the biggest fan of roguelites in general, and the meta progression is kind of weird in this game. I wouldn't say they have minimal impact, though. You can get the important stuff pretty quickly, but I feel like that's a good thing to get variety early in the game. The RNG definitely feels more rigged than before. I can't count the number of times I've made tactical purchases or route decision only to have the game counter my efforts with the worst case scenario possible. I mean, sounds like a skill issue, but also, welcome to Darkest Dungeon, buddy. Typically, when I get screwed over by RNG and the character dies, I'd rather just quit the run than have one of the many terrible characters forced on me at the next inn. This game is not fun or better than the first Darkest Dungeon, and I won't be getting anywhere near the 400 hours of playtime I put into the first game. I'll just have to hope the mod community comes out with a game-altering mod that makes this worth playing, since Roothook completely screwed up. Alright, so this is a very much a skill issue review. You know, they started out, you know, talking about meta progression and the pointlessness of it, which, like, if you expand on this, you know, you're on track for a decent review. But then they just got sidetracked into complaining about skill issue. And, I mean, the RNG just, like, objectively is not worse than Darkest Dungeon 1. You're under much more control. Part of that is just because the game's easier. But part of that is just you have a lot more control with the systems in Darkest Dungeon 2. Alright, here we got a 3 hours at review time review. Oh god, he's one of these guys that are going to be really obnoxious with a super long and pointless review. Alright.
Ruin has come to our series. You remember our venerable game, opulent and imperial, gazing proudly from its stoic perch above the Steam charts. I played all my hours in that classic, mechanic, shadowed experience, fattened by decadence and luxury, and yet I began to tire of conventional extravagance. Singular, unsettling tales suggested the game itself was a gateway to some fabulous and unnameable power. With relic and ritual, I bent every effort towards the excavation and recovery of those long-buried secrets, exhausting what remained of our family fortune on swarthy workmen and sturdy shovels. At last, in the salt-soaked crags beneath the lowest foundations, we unearthed that damnable portal of antediluvian evil. Our every step unsettled the ancient earth, but we were in a realm of death and madness. In the end, I alone fled, laughing and wailing through those blackened arcades of antiquity, until consciousness failed me. You remember our venerable game, opulent and imperial? It is a festering abomination. I beg you, return to the first game, claim your birthright, and deliver our family from the ravenous, clutching shadows of the Darkest Dungeon.
2. Alright, so of course this guy wanted to be very obnoxious. Unfortunately, like, he basically gave up in this entire middle portion and just copy pasted the intro. So I would give you points for originality, but you failed. This game is a massive disappointment compared to the first game. Honestly, the only explanation I can think of for this game being such a large step backwards from the first game that came out in 2016 is that the developers did in fact grow gluttonous in their perch above the moor and were corrupted by their own sins to the point of festering abomination. Between the failed attempt to be an Epic Games exclusive, which was renounced during early access, fake news, literal fake news, and the way the mechanics feel like a poorly made mobile game. Again, how? Can you expand on this? They're literally just mechanics from the first game, but streamlined and made better. This just feels like a completely new and unexperienced dev team came in and hijacked the game from the original developers in order to make it more marketable to 10-year-olds on smartphones with their favorite e-girl stream pulled up in mini player mode. What in the nonsense incel? Please someone tell me what 10-year-olds are playing Darkest Dungeon 2. Have any of y'all seen 10-year-olds playing Darkest Dungeon 2? Literally, my Steam analytics, I have like 0.5% under 18 audience. I literally have more 50-year-old viewers than I do, 10-year-olds. If you're going to write like a super long review and then be like, I can't believe how gluttonous these developers are, like actually criticize the game. There's not a single criticism of the game in this entire review. Like literally not a single criticism in the entire review. Like I understand this is supposed to be funny. And if this was actually funny, like if they kept this, like I might have a chuckle if they kept this up. But they wrote like 2 sentences, then copy pasted, and then they're like, oh yeah, this is a mobile game. And then the review ended. So great job, buddy. In between whippings, my father would often talk to me about the meaning of disrespect. As his belt met my bottom repeatedly, he told me how if someone puts their game on the Epic Store, but not on Steam, to create a console war for PC gaming, they deserve to be belted just like I was. Thanks, Dad. All right, another Epic Store classic. I don't really understand the console war thing. Guys, you just download a different launcher. That's all you have to do. Now, Epic sucks. Their client sucks compared to Steam. That's why I have the game on Steam and I play on Steam. But it's not a console war. You don't have to go beat up 10-year-olds at Walmart to get a PS5 because they, have limited stock. You just go to your browser and you download a launcher. That's all you do. Please, just calm down. Grinding heroes in Darkest Dungeon 2? Nope. With every chapter/run, you will automatically lose all your progress. Your skill points, your skills, your trinkets, everything. Imagine you beat the chapter. You manage to slay the final boss, which is reasonably hard, unfair, and stressful enough as it is. And your characters that you geared up and skilled up will enter a new chapter exhausted and wrecked, no HP, high stress, with all their illnesses. And that's it. All skills back at level 0, no items, no money, nothing. Have you finished the chapter stockpiled on money? Resetted, gone, you start with nothing. Thumbs down, disappointed. Okay. Great review. You basically just reviewed roguelites and gave them thumbs down. Very useful review. 0.1 hours on record. This is surely to be a very good, very balanced, very well-informed review. It's hard to put into words on how disappointed I am in this game, so I won't. Wow, then why are you sending the review if you aren't going to put into words? I bought it, played it, and refunded it. Do with this information as you will. This is literally not any information at all. What do you want me to do with this information except put it in a review so I can monetize it? Edit. Oh, so this was his original review, and then he decided to go back and edit his review. I've had some time to think about it and stand by what I said. Although you didn't go back and spend more than 0.1 hours on the game, I stand by what I said. I only put 30 mins into Darkest Dungeon 2, but I put almost 1,000 hours into Darkest Dungeon 1 across 3 different machines. Thanks for the relevant info. Now that I know you put hours across 3 different machines into Darkest Dungeon 1, I'm going to take your review a lot more seriously. I wanted more of Darkest Dungeon 1. What I got was a heart roguelite with the Darkest Dungeon brand slapped onto it. The art direction they took was garbage. It looks like a bad mobile game. Again, with the mobile game stuff, the carriage is a weird tacked-on gimmick that should have just been a branching tree like in Slay the Spire. That would not make sense in Darkest Dungeon 1. In Darkest Dungeon, you literally just walk through dungeons when you could just click on dungeons. Like, no. There are no new heroes. Literally incorrect. Fewer skills than in Darkest Dungeon 1. Literally incorrect. And no campfire skills. Why would that matter? They took a winning formula, threw it away, and put out this mess. So basically, literally everything in this review is wrong. Congratulations, moron. Alright, we have almost 12 hours on record at review time. I have a generally simple solution for this game. It should be titled Darkest Road. Bro, if I had $1 for every time I saw this nonsense, I would never work again. If your only problem with the game is the title of the game, don't write a negative review. This tells you everything about the game. It is DD art style, DD characters, dear DD narrator, but it is not a Darkest Dungeon 2. Okay, so everything about the game, you know, the whole vibe, atmosphere, even the gameplay, as far as, you know, the combat goes, it's all the same as Darkest Dungeon. It's all in that same universe. But because it's not exactly the same, as in you don't go from dungeon to dungeon, somehow it's not. Somehow it's not Darkest Dungeon 2. This is a roguelite traveling road. Absolutely pointless, but fun in DD way. You see, in DD, you perfectly understand why you go to the dungeons, and the whole story behind your ancestor in the hamlet. Was so cool to return from dungeon and find out the barbarians rockfest in a tavern, or when you needed a slot in a hospital, but it is already taken. All these little details. Alright, did we understand why we're going? There's literally more lore in Darkest Dungeon 2 than there is in Darkest Dungeon 1. What do you not understand about... Oh, I understood why we go to these random dungeons instead of just going to the Darkest Dungeon straight away. Rather than, you know, Darkest Dungeon 2 where it's very spelled out for you. Also, sure, I guess. Here you see the mountain. 2 regions left before the mountain. Now, you enter the mountain. What for? Why should I travel there? Why should you go to the ruins? Does it advance the story at all? No, you just collect loot so you can go to the Darkest Dungeon. That's the point of Darkest Dungeon. Here you're going to the mountain because that's literally where all the evil is emanating from. Like how can you like not understand like a very obvious story? What's the story behind this inn I am taking rest in? Why do you need to know this for your enjoyment? Why would you need a backstory for the inn? Like, what? Who set the great library on fire, and what happened to this librarian? In DD, you listen to a little story about a boss encounter while loading screen. In Darkest Road, you watch beautiful but absolutely unnecessary animations of 3D road and fight. What? So the lore was necessary in Darkest Dungeon 1, even though I can't even comprehend this. Hero relationships are an absolute miss, for me at least. By the way, all first 4 heroes don't have positive relations artificially. I've tried first chapter with 2 new characters, and surprise, surprise, it was easier to build positive relations. Have you considered that you improved when you did your next mission and not that you artificially can't have positive relations? Maybe you should actually pay attention to game mechanics and stop wondering what the lore behind the inn is. I don't like this game. It lacks lore. It literally doesn't lack lore. That's like one of the biggest criticisms I see of the game, is how you have to start every single run with a bunch of lore. It's not exciting to play like it should be in roguelites. I mean, this is a fair criticism that it's not good as a roguelite. I've seen this a lot. I mean, it's hard for me to agree because I have so many hours, but if you would actually expand on this rather than ranting about lack of lore at inns, maybe this would be a good review. No catchphrases from Nerder like in DD. I think at this point this is untrue. Although, I don't know if he has as many catchphrases as he had in Dark Dungeon 1, so it is true a little bit. Anyway, fantastic review. Spent all of it complaining that you don't have lore about inns, so great job. Alright, 24 hours on record. We are improving. I hate to have to choose not recommended for my review, as DD2 really isn't a bad game. The problem lies in the fact that it isn't a sequel to Darkest Dungeon, and anyone who is a fan of the first game won't find much here that they will be excited about. This is just not true. They really should have avoided marketing this as a direct sequel, as nothing about this game feels like a sequel. It feels like an experimental ancillary project using a Darkest Dungeon IP. How is it not a sequel? It continues lore, same characters, same atmosphere, same general gameplay mechanics, as in you fight random battles, collect loot, and tackle a final boss. Like, no, it's literally a sequel, guys. No, it is not literally exactly the same as Darkest Dungeon, but it is objectively a sequel. Does this mean it's a bad game? No, it's really a pretty decent and fun game. They attempted to refine the dungeon crawling combat formula into a more bite-sized format that would be more appealing to those who don't enjoy the intensive micromanagement of the original. So it sounds like they enjoy the game, but they just don't like that they didn't call it Darkest Road again. Fantastic. The negative aspects of DD2 likewise stem from that same refinement and tightening. Because so much relies on RNG, there's almost no way to ensure consistency in anything. That's just not true. One of the overarching goals in the original DD was building up your town and supplies so that every expedition was building off the last and ensuring that you could keep carrying that momentum forward even in the event of complete disaster. There's almost no consistency in DD2. You start with no trinkets. Alright, this... What? What? This is literally... See, the problem is they don't understand the concept of the game. This is literally what you do in Darkest Dungeon 2. You go through a run, and you accumulate loot, masteries, unlock new skills, and each run... You know, each inn you get to, you're a little bit stronger until you get to the final mountain. And that is a full run in comparison with Darkest Dungeon 1, where it's a full run through all the dungeon crawling. You literally do build up yourself from inn to inn, from location to location. And then you go here, and then they talk about how, you know, you start with no trinkets and stagecoach items, and you spend the meta progression. So here, they also show that from run to run, you also build up yourself. You build off each mission, unlocking more stuff. So they're just like... I don't even understand this part. They're just like writing words. Blah, blah, blah. This might seem like a good way to force a player out of a rut of trying the same thing over and over again. Except as mentioned before, you have to spend your limited resources to upgrade heroes. Unlocking hero skills involves hitting hero shrines, which are randomly generated in an area, and even with the best luck will still require multiple runs to fully unlock one hero skills. This is a criticism I have of the game. Hero shrines are... There's nowhere near enough hero shrines. They're not scouted by default. And you can fail them. And there's also it's just way too much in my opinion. So this is one of like the chief criticisms I have of the game. It's good to see that here. This means you end up feeling railroaded into using the same characters if you want to make any progress. I mean, I guess this is fair, but this is just criticizing a roguelite. But this is also building off the criticism of the hero shrines. They definitely make the progression seem sluggish, because I think they definitely made the altar, with the increased altar and candle rewards, it definitely moves a lot quicker, and hero shrines are just kind of a slog. The variety in gameplay suffers heavily from the tightened scope as well. I hope you enjoy fighting heretics and brigands over and over again under the same circumstances, because that's all you're going to see until you beat the path boss and unlock the next path, where you get 2 whole new additional areas where absolutely nothing is different other than the aesthetics and a slight flavor change. I mean, this is a fair criticism, but this is also, you know, Darkest Dungeon 1. I'd actually be interested to see how many enemies are in each game, because this is definitely fair. If you play lots of hours, you're going to see the same enemies, but this is also just how it is. The solution isn't really just add more enemies, it's make mechanics slightly more interesting. The area bosses aren't even interesting. They usually have one gimmick, and either you're prepared for it and know you can win, or you avoid it so you don't dumpster an entire run for some useless currency, garbage random trinkets, and a boss trophy that you may not even be able to make use of. Alright, so literally false. Bosses are amazing for doing stuff. Even without stuff unlocked, you can get so much good stuff by getting loot. Hell, early in the game, bosses are even better, because they're the only place you can actually get these rare trinkets. All of which are going to disappear at the end of that run anyways, so why even bother? Why bother playing Darkest Dungeon 1? Once you beat the game, you beat the game and nothing matters. What? How does this make sense? Combat has been tightened as well, but mostly remains the same from the first. However, just like everything else, it benefits and suffers from this. Some heroes have been completely reworked, while others are almost entirely the same. The Highwayman is the reliable workhorse he was in the first game, while the Vestal has been turned into a gimmicky nightmare that can't fill any support, frontline healer role consistently, as all her abilities now have cooldowns or conditions that are required to be met before they can be used, ensuring you can never reliably respond to anything during a fight that isn't going how you planned. Maybe you need to understand cooldowns and conditions so you can plan during a fight. The mark mechanic has been changed to combo, now with certain skills getting buffs, extra effects against combo enemies, but applying combo is now tied to RNG for most skills. It requires you sacrifice a more useful skill to apply it consistently for little gain usually. This is just not true. Maybe actually play the game once in a while. A consequence of the trinkets and consumables you find being random is that there's no consistent way to control the speed turn order of your team, meaning any attempt to have a set 'em up and knock 'em down style party is just frustrating, usually pointless when you realize just having a party where everyone does their own thing and only synergizes if an opportunity presents itself is the more reliable option. Also just not true. The relationship mechanic is interesting in theory. In practice, it's just another form of RNG that you can exert some control over, and ultimately only serves as another way to dumpster a run early on, as it can render an entire party comp dead in the water, as it randomly selects a negative skill from both affected heroes, locks that skill to their bar, and then inflicts a negative debuff on the opposing hero anytime that skill is used. Meaning what little skill synergies or support you use are now entirely useless. Want to strip that enemy's buffs so your Highwayman can land a crit? Go ahead, but now that debuff skill inflicts blind on your frontliner, which can be cleared by another skill, but that inflicts vulnerable on your weakest party member, who can be healed so long as you're okay with inflicting weakness on your Highwayman. Maybe don't get negative relationships, forehead. Skill issue, TBH. So this at least had some actual criticism of the game, even though they started out saying they gave it a negative review because they wish it was entitled Darkest Dungeon 2. But sure, fantastic review. Alright, and to finish off this review, I decided to review a review that was actually reviewed as helpful. Let's see, 18 hours at review time. Really hate to echo what many others have said about this game, but Darkest Dungeon 2 is a significant departure from many things that made the first game great. Gameplay of this game, outside of combat, simply does not play like a game. It plays like a tedious job where you have to tough out all the rough bits for countless hours to get to the parts you like. I mean, I guess I personally enjoy the parts outside of combat. Those are the parts that actually matter. You know, scaling yourself. As others said, the stagecoach sections are extremely tiring and, simply put, not fun. I don't dislike the Slay the Spire-esque map and layout of each area, but movement and events between each encounter is completely unnecessary and serves only to waste your time. In the unfortunate event that you are forced to undertake a repair encounter, you must prepare for extreme frustration. So first they go from here where they just don't like the stagecoach sections. Completely fair criticism. This is definitely one of the main criticisms I've seen. Personally, I'm okay with the stagecoach sections. I'm okay with the atmosphere. Should they speed them up? Yes. Should they have a fast mode enabled in-game like Slay the Spire does? Absolutely. Absolutely fair criticism. Then they go into repair encounters. Need one specific character to hold off a powerful enemy or save a dying ally. Sorry, they're selected for repair duty this turn. I cannot express how bad it feels to have a party wipe on these encounters, as any fragment of hope you have left is likely to be ruined by being selected for repair duty. Alright, sounds like a skill issue to me, to be honest. You should be punished for repair fights. Also, it's not a mandatory loss unless you're bad at the game. So, yeah, skill issue, buddy. While a minor complaint, my biggest issue with the stagecoach is how much time you're forced to waste watching it in between runs. Absolutely agree. It takes so long to set up between runs. This is absolutely legitimate criticism. Have a bad run and decide to say, forget it, you're starting over. Well, hold on. You first have to go to the Altar of Light. Ready to spend your 3 candles you earned in the last hour? Skill issue. Pepe laugh. Then let's listen to the narrator talk about your confession that you've heard a dozen times because you either suck at the game, self-aware, or have displeased the spirits of RNG. Honestly, losing again and again and having to restart would feel much better if the game didn't insist on wasting an additional 5 minutes of your time between attempts, not including the valley section of each run. Definitely agree. I understand the idea between, atmosphere and lore, but, sometimes you just want to start a run. This is definitely something I wish would be at least an option. Just a menu option. It's not all bad. Again, as others said, the artwork and animations are absolutely fantastic. They've done a great job moving the game to 3D. The Runaway character is a fantastic addition to the game. Is this the first ever guy that said the Runaway is a fantastic addition to the game? And it comes in a negative review? Actually insane. World first. World first. Along with the new abilities given to every class. Yeah, heroes having 11 abilities is insane. The paths feature takes some notorious unique trinkets from the first game and transforms them into interesting ways to play classes you may have not previously considered. I can honestly say the combat feels very satisfying and fun when RNG doesn't decide your run has gone on too long. RNG doesn't decide your run. Skill issue, by the way. As a footnote, I really wish they brought back all the original classes from the first game. I like how the Antiquarian is an opportunist enemy, but I find myself greatly missing the Crusader in the rest of the game. Maybe they'll be added in DLC eventually, I can only hope. I agree. I hope everyone is brought back. It may be masochism, but I intend to finish the game, despite my not being able to recommend it in its current form. I will update this review if developers make significant changes to the game, or my completion of it changes my opinion. Alright, pretty good review. I think they focused a little too much on the stagecoach and the repairs. I would have liked them to talk about anything other than this. Like, they talked about the stagecoach, this is the entirety of their negative review, right? And it's all stagecoach takes too long, stagecoach takes too long between runs, and the one part of combat they actually talked about, the one gameplay mechanic outside of that, they talked about not liking repair fights. So, yeah, a little too much time spent on... I would like to hear their opinions on other sections of the game. Because if it's a not recommended review, there has to be other aspects of gameplay you didn't like. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this review of Steam reviews. I will have my review up tomorrow after this one is out. We'll talk about the good, bad, and ugly. And if you enjoy this video, I would like to do reviews of Steam reviews, reviews of, website reviews. I know Shuffle did a guide review, which was really funny. We could do, Reddit reviews. If any of you guys would enjoy this content, let me know. And thank you all for watching, and good night.